Hey there guys, we're taking a look at Alien Isolation running on the AMD Ryzen 5 5500U. Now the game is currently running at 1080p with the low in-game graphics. Now everything's not set to the absolute lowest that it can go, but it is pretty much set to the low setting. There are certain things that can go down to very low, but I did not set those to that. But here you can see the game running at the 15 watt TDP, which is stock for this chip on this laptop. And the performance that we're getting here is passable, though it's nothing remarkable. Having averages in the mid 40s is decent enough and it's playable enough, but it's not going to be anything mind-blowing. The real benefit here is the fact that the 1% lows are really sticking pretty close to those averages, and if you look at those frame time charts, they are as flat as you can pretty much realistically get. So overall, it is a good experience to play this, so the averages might not be the highest that they could ever be, but overall the performance that we get out of this is very, very decent, and it's fully playable like this. So if you can only run this game at the stock settings, you are going to be able to get an actual playable experience here, which is great to see for a game like this. But of course, these AMD Ryzen chips really let you get a lot out of them by raising the TDP. So if we mess around with the TDP presets in the APU tuning utility, we can see what the performance is like with the different TDP settings. So starting off with the battery saver mode. Now the battery saver mode really is just not going to be a playable experience here. You can see that while we are getting some very, very low power usage here and the temperatures are pretty amazing, the FPS is anything but that. Though those 1% lows are keeping pretty close to those averages, really close honestly, but overall it's such a low FPS that you can't realistically play this like this unless you're like an executive at Ubisoft and you think that this is about the peak of gaming. So in all honesty, this is just not going to be playable, which seems to be the case with this setting in almost every game that we're going to try out that's going to be a AAA title. These Zen 2 APUs just really don't seem to scale too well at these extremely low TDPs. But let's move on to the TDPs that people actually care about. So at the balance preset, which seems to set a target anywhere between like 22 to like 25 TDP. I'm not 100% sure what it is. I really wish it would label what it says the TDP to. Just having these blank names that don't really tell you anything is not really helpful. From what I've deduced, it's pretty much going for a target of 25, but it really seems to fluctuate a lot. So it might be a target of 22 or something like that. But overall, the level of performance that we're getting here is very decent. We are pretty much now getting a 60 FPS average, though the 1% lows took a bit of a hit from where we were at before, but it really just tends to fluctuate depending on what's going on. So those 1% lows aren't going to be too representative of what's going on here. Look at those frame times though. The frame times are really what matters the most. You'll see them spike around a little bit just because things need to be loaded in, but overall it keeping a mostly flat experience is letting you know that you're actually going to be having a very, very good time playing here. And really the 1% lows aren't really that different from where we were at the stock setting. I mean, it's just a 1 FPS difference. So really it's within margin of error. They're going to be practically identical, but you are getting higher averages, and again, those frame times are keeping a mostly consistent experience there. Really, the biggest surprise to me was actually the performance preset, because we actually managed to get some very solid gains here, specifically in the 1% lows. Now, the averages do see a nice bump. They are now comfortably above 60, but it's the 1% lows almost getting to 60 that really is the icing on top here, where the performance is just so good. This feels damn near perfect, especially with the screen on this laptop. It's just so good. And honestly, the temperature increase, at least for me personally, is not super high, though 81 is starting to get into some dangerous territory, and I'm guessing that by the time summer rolls around here in Texas, it's going to be out of the question, really. But at least while we're still in spring, it's going to be at least a little bit usable here. So really, if you can actually have the headroom to go all the way up to the performance preset, you are going to gain a lot in terms of performance. But if you don't have the headroom for it, then go for balanced. You can't do balanced, stay with stock. It's playable in all of them. This is just going to give you the best overall experience. And really, it just comes down to you whether or not it's worth the temperature increases and the noise and everything else that comes with just running more power through a system like this. Because I will say that while gaming for extensive periods of time with the performance preset, you will start to notice the chassis get really noticeably hot, to the point where there are certain sections of the keyboard that actually become uncomfortable to use. So again, the performance preset is really just pushing past what this system itself is really capable of to comfortably play. So unless you're really desperate for that FPS and you really want those ultra smooth 1% lows, I don't really think it's worth it. I say stick with balanced. You get the benefit of the increased averages over just the stock without getting into too crazy at temperature territories. But right here, this is just really a little too much for me, where I start to kind of get a little bit uncomfortable with the amount of heat being generated here, especially if it's going to be like extensive periods of gaming. If you're going to be sitting here for the next 3 to 4 hours gaming, I really don't think you should just leave your system cooking itself for that long. That's my personal choice. Anyways, I really appreciate you watching. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.